Hi, welcome back to the Life on the Wrist podcast. Hope you all are doing well. Today we're going to be looking at some of the news from Geneva Watch Days. It looked like a great event. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but there seemed to be a lot of excitement over Instagram, some really great symposiums, some nice watch releases. And so I thought I would sort of give you my thoughts on a couple of the things that took place. I know that in the, I think 2 podcasts ago, we discussed some of the symposiums that were going to happen, and I did want to mention a couple of them that I thought were really great, and I'll leave links in the show notes so you can watch them. I highly recommend you watch them and hear what some of the industry leaders are sort of saying about the watch industry. I will start off, though, with some of the new watch releases that sort of caught my eye during this event. There were some really nice releases that came out from a lot of these brands, but I'll speak about maybe 3 that sort of caught my eye. Naturally, I think you can guess the first one that I want to talk about is the H. Moser and MB&F collaboration for the streamliner called the Pandemonium. So this was a really great collaboration that MB&F and H. Moser have done for Only Watch 2023. What the watch is, it's a stainless steel streamliner that was manufactured by H. Moser. It has a flying balance wheel that is iconic and symbolic of MB&F. And then the other thing that it has is that it has a minute repeater. What's really cool is the minute repeater is actually DJ'd by a little panda figure and is sort of a thing that MB&F has done for many of their pieces, for their pieces related to Only Watch. So their original panda was created for Only Watch 2011. It was also in their Only Watch for 2021, and now it's in their 2023 version. There was a lot of excitement about this release, some really cool sort of teaser videos about music and those sort of themes, artists and music that both CEOs, or I guess co-founders, sort of did, which was really great, and I think it was a nice lead up to this release. I should mention that the dial of this is like a really nice sort of like turquoise blue, which is really, really beautiful. So yeah, you've got a minute repeater on this, a really cool panda figure that is hand finished. There's a video that I'm going to mention next where you can actually see the size of this panda, and it's really, really small. And so then you've got the minute repeater that it is sort of DJing. So obviously at this event, the 2 brands did a release video, which I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can watch it as well. It's about 30 minutes. We'll sort of talk about the creation of this piece and answer some questions that some of the audience members had about it. So I recommend you check it out. I do think it's one of the best videos from the weekend. Obviously, Max Busser and Edouard Mélin are the individuals who sort of host it. And it's really cool to see and hear about the creation of it and see the sizes of things. What was really funny is both Edouard and Max mentioned, it's weird doing a watch launch when you don't have the watch. There's only one of these because it was made for Only Watch, so only one of these was made, and it was, I believe, on tour with Only Watch, so they didn't actually have the physical object. What was also really cool is they did this little sort of raffle golden ticket concept at the end of the symposium, or I guess the unveiling, with their sort of goodie bags, where an individual was going to be able to get a panda figure that was on stage with them at the time, and then another panda figure was actually auctioned off by Philips in association with Box and Rousseau during just an auction that was held that essentially was raising money for the horological school in Geneva, I believe. So another really cool concept, but pandas were definitely their major theme. I'll also give a shout out to Thibaut for his enthusiasm for pandas and his incredible tattoo that was circulating on Instagram of the panda figure tattooed on I don't remember where, but it was a really cool sort of passion, I'll call it that. So really enjoyed that release. Of course, this is a one of one. It's for Only Watch, so it's maybe not a mass produced release, but certainly a nice collaboration between two brands that do it really, really well. The next sort of release I wanted to talk about was the new Resonance Type 3E. Their Type 3E was originally released, I think, in black, and there wasn't with a black dial, and it really wasn't. There wasn't anything too different about it, but they actually released a version with this eucalyptus green dial, which I think is really attractive. Obviously, this brand has gotten so much respect and so much enthusiasm, which I'm really happy about. The green is an interesting green. It's kind of it's described as eucalyptus green. It reminds me in a way of sort of like an army green or like a deep green color, which is quite nice. So an interesting release. I think dial colors and playing around with dial colors is something that brands can do very, very well, and I think this is a nice example. The third watch I wanted to mention is from Laurent Ferrier, which was a new automotive-inspired piece that they've released. So they released this sort of sport auto watch that was inspired by Laurent Ferrier's racing past. So back in 1979, Laurent Ferrier decided that he wanted to enter the 24-hour of Le Mans with his friends François Sévanin and François Trisconi, and they entered in a Porsche 935 Turbo with the number 40. This was really supposed to just be a little bit of fun, but what was crazy is they actually ended up placing third overall. They won second in Group 5, and François Sévanin, who is the founder and president of Laurent Ferrier, was actually named the best French driver in the competition. And so what they've done with this sport auto is they've taken they've adjusted the dial color, the lume, and the accents on the watch to match the livery of the Porsche 935 Turbo number 40, which basically encapsulates sort of the history of Ferrier in this great event that they took place. The watch is only limited to 40 pieces, so limited quantities, an incredibly cool looking watch. This was on Instagram. I saw this on Instagram first, and I absolutely I just love the way that it looks. I also think when you're buying a watch from a brand like Laurent Ferrier, I think you have to connect with the company and the team in some way. When you're buying watches from maybe larger brands, it sometimes is difficult to connect with them on maybe a personal level or hear an interesting story from them about maybe their past or something that they did. Because I'll just take Rolex as an example. Sure, maybe you are a diver and so you use a Submariner, but having a personal story attached with maybe an individual at Rolex, and that's the reason why this watch came into existence, and et cetera. That's sometimes difficult to do with larger brands, but I think this is a really good looking watch, first off, because I think your eyes are obviously the first thing that are going to be introduced to this piece. And then the second thing is, what a great story and a great way to connect with the brand. Also, something that happened this past week was the 2023 Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève announced their nominees for the 15 categories of awards that they're going to be giving in Geneva on November 9th. The GPHG was created in 2001, and it's a public interest foundation that basically is kind of like the Academy Awards of watchmaking. And so they've released their pieces. One thing that I really was excited about was a couple of the pieces. There's 90 timepieces, 84 watches, and 6 clocks that have been announced as nominees for the various categories of awards that the GPHG will be giving, which is exciting. I think that's really, really exciting. One of the things that I thought was really cool is the Pitiogi award included the repeater. I think it's a quarter repeater that was made by Christopher Ward, which I thought was really, really cool. Let me just make sure. Yes, it's the C1 Bel Canto, which is very exciting to see. It's one of definitely I think it will be a big hit, and I think has been a big hit, honestly, for watchmaking, because to get an expensive repeater watch is difficult. I've spoken at length about how I think alarm watches are really cool because they use a similar type of complication to repeater watches. Now, with the introduction of this Christopher Ward, you can get something different. Now, repeater watches, a lot of it has to do with the sound. Some people don't like the sound of certain repeaters. They want it to sound in a certain way. Each their own. But one of the watches that I was also very excited to see was included in the men's category was the Code 1159 Star Wheel by Oroma Piguet. I do think that this is a really great introduction. Obviously, it is taking inspiration from a piece that they had produced in their past, but I do think that it's a nice different way of telling time. And for me, it was one of my favorite watches actually that was released. So very nice to see that. Grunefeld also had some really great watches. I'll leave a link in the show notes to all the nominated pieces so you can check it out. It's probably the easiest way to do this because I can't really speak about it. No MBNFs, so you'll have to stay tuned maybe for next year to see if there will be any MBNFs announced. So one of the things that I mentioned I wanted to do was just sort of speak about some of the symposiums that took place. It was hosted by Revolution Watch, and I think there were some really nice panels of individuals that participated. I highly recommend checking out the first symposium that they had, which was the watch industry's greatest brand builders. It had some of the arguably some of the most iconic individuals and most influential people who built incredible pieces of this industry that we love so much. And there's some really great insights. One of my favorite questions was what's the biggest threat to the watch industry? And there were such an interesting array of answers. I'm not going to tell you what they were. I recommend that you watch the symposium, but there were some really insightful things that were said, and I definitely enjoyed that one a lot. The other one that I really enjoyed was the Most Innovative Retailer Symposium. So obviously last week we discussed the fact that Rolex bought Bucher, and that's a fairly big piece of news to come out and then have a symposium where you're talking to innovative retailers. The individuals who were a part of the symposium really have such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to retailing watches, and each has sort of their own perspectives. Some of the concepts that were spoken about obviously was the acquisition by Rolex of Bucher. That's basically how they kicked it off, but then they sort of divulged into other things about how each retailer is sort of unique in a specific way, which I thought was quite interesting to hear. One of the things that was also mentioned a lot was sort of their CRM or client relationship management sort of systems that they use, because that at the end of the day is really important for retailers, and developing good relationships with their clients is really at the forefront of any type of industry. especially in sort of luxury watchmaking. And so anyway, I won't sort of drone on about what was spoken about in it, but I highly recommend you check it out. So I'll leave a link in the show notes to all the symposiums that I have mentioned before. So that's it. Geneva Watch Days is sort of in the books. It was a great week. It looked like a lot of fun. A lot of cool things happened on Instagram that I was able to see, and some great stuff on YouTube as well for some of the new releases. I'm sure you were keeping track of what was sort of going on. I'll use this time just to quickly give a shout out to some of the things that have happened at Life on the Wrist recently. So we recently got 4 watches in. I think we've spoken about them a little bit. Last week we released our article about the 1954 solid gold Longines reference 727-S-724-40, which is a really cool 34mm Longines in solid gold. Case was manufactured in the US, which was quite unique, and it has this really interesting dial that has sort of these 2 rings that has sort of this guilloche finishing on the outside with diamond set hour markers at 12, 3, 9, and 6. And it's running on a pretty iconic movement. I think it's the 23ZS, which is a really great looking movement. So our article is out. If you want to check that out on lifeonthewrist.com, you can. We also will be covering 3 other pieces over the next couple of weeks, all sort of in a similar way. We've got a Gérard Perregaux 7742 alarm watch, which is really cool. We've got a Universal Genève Golden Shadow, which is obviously an extremely important piece for the brand. And then we've got this really cool Longines with a linen dial that's really attractive. So excited to get into those, but I just wanted to give you guys, a little bit of a agenda for what's going to be happening at Life on the Wrist over the next couple of weeks. So I think we will end it there. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. If you are new to the podcast, be sure to follow us and share this podcast with a friend who might be interested in watches. If you are feeling generous and wouldn't mind rating this podcast, it really does help me out. Feedback is what I want this podcast to be helpful to you. And if you have some helpful feedback, let me know. If you want to talk about any of the things we've spoken about on this podcast, you can send us an email, or you can hit us up on any of the social medias. It's more than happy to send us a DM on Instagram. I'd love to chat about some of the things that happened last week. With that said, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I will see you in the next one.